Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Look at Loren the Amazon Princess. This just came out on Steam, and like a lot of games that have come out in 2014 on Steam so far, this is an RPG/strategy game, not unlike necessarily War of the Human Tanks, not necessarily super unlike something like the Banner Saga, with a heavily story-driven component, and as you can probably guess by the art style here, it's a little bit more on the visual novel style side. Like, I don't necessarily want to say this without being able to back it up, but it seems a little bit more anime-inspired, if that makes sense. And there are romantic elements here as well. This is not necessarily a dating simulator, but from what I've played, there are overtones of romance, and a lot of the Steam reviews seem to indicate that there is a little bit of a racy scene that can come at the end of the game, but we are not going to get into that. This is $20 available on Steam. We're going to check it out. There's a lot of things I like, there's a lot of things I don't like, and I'll give you my overall impressions as we get a little bit further involved here. So I played about an hour of this, as you can, for once, actually verify from our kind of save states here. I'm probably going to want to start from... I'm just thinking, maybe we'll start from this save right here. So this is in the middle of Chapter 1, basically. This is the game has told me to actually save the game here. What's kind of neat about Loren, the Amazon Princess, is that there's a character creation, but it's not your traditional character creation. Basically, the way that the story goes, this is Loren, she's the main character, she's the Amazonian princess, and her mother's been lost. There was like a hunting party or something, or a scouting party, and her mother's been kidnapped, and they don't know where he is, so she's like, I'm gonna go find her. So the protagonist here is this Amazonian woman, but your character, you have a choice between a male and a female, and they can be a warrior, a thief, an elf, etc., etc., is this guy right here. So this is Loren, and he's kind of her bodyguard in the Amazonian world. Men are subservient, they're only useful as like a means for procreation, and he's kind of like her slave, but he's accompanying her as basically like a bodyguard. And I think this is cool because we're actually going to start with some combat first off, and then I'll be able to talk about the VN style stuff that happens here. So very first things first, this is how we orient our party, so if we wanted to, we can move them around. The placement, like, horizontally doesn't seem to matter at all. Anything in the front row can attack anything in the front row, even if they're not right next to it, which is a weird thing to get used to after playing like 6 or 7 hours of the Banner Saga, as I have this week. And in the back row, you need to have a ranged attack in order to hit people that are more than one row away, as you might expect. So we're going to keep both of our units in the front row here, because they both have relatively high HP. And this is our combat screen. This is a little bit of a sore spot for me, and I want to talk about this, because I gotta, just a spoiler right off the bat, Loren the Amazon Princess is not the favorite RPG or strategy game that I've played recently, even though I think it has some cool things going on, especially on the narrative side with how robust and kind of unusual it is, from my perspective at least. But I'm not necessarily impressed by the way combat works, especially when it comes to graphically and from an animation standpoint. So you can see our movement order over here. This is an interface that I've become very accustomed to in January so far. Loren is our Amazonian princess, and Loren is our bodyguard here. The way that we attack is basically when it's someone's turn, we just click on a unit, and then we can choose what to do. As of right now, we don't really have that many options, but we can do a melee attack or use a potion on them, which seems really silly. So we can attack them for 26 to 29 damage, and then the AI will go. Unlike something like the Banner Saga, ooh, yeah, we want to use the attack here. Unlike something like the Banner Saga, it's not alternating, it's just a standard kind of like movement order. So if 3 enemies go at once, then 3 enemies go at once. Are we paralyzed? No, we're scared. Target defense value is reduced by 25% for the duration of the effect. The story here is that we're basically in a kind of an unfriendly town, and this is an assassination attempt that has come for us the first night when we're staying in the inn. So just to give you a little bit of what's going on in the story. The story is pretty robust. I don't want to talk too much about it just yet, because we're going to be able to talk about it maybe even borderline ad nauseum once we actually finish the first couple of encounters that we're going to have here. So as of right now, the combat pretty simplistic, and honestly in the, you know, a little bit over an hour I've played so far, hasn't changed too much so far, but we do get more party members. Right now, basically both of these are kind of like standard. What is this? Reduces target attribute values based on difficulty level and exposes him to advanced attacks available to warriors and thieves. Okay, well, we've been pushed back like 1 space, but our hero here, well, he can heal himself, which I actually did not know, but he can also do some ranged attacks. So why don't we just do ranged attacks for now? What I do want to talk about as well is that there's some pretty important stats here. Like, if you look at the cost, the SP is our... oh god, what is happening? Is that like a car horn outside? I'm sorry. Viewers, that's not my... This is what happens. There's accidents at that intersection all the time. Quite frankly, it's a little... Oh, I broke my arm. I'm trying to record videos in here. This is my job. Just go to the hospital. Quit whining about it. Obviously, I'm being facetious. I guess we can actually do a melee attack from afar, but we can actually do a ranged attack with our bow and arrow instead. And what's important to note is the delay that this causes, because this pushes us further back in the movement order. So we could do a ranged attack, but the delay on it is obviously huge. Or we could do a melee attack, and it's less damage, but the delay is less than half as much. So maybe we would rather do that. And maybe it has a greater chance to miss when you're far away. I apologize for not knowing the exact mechanics so far. We can move, by the way, if we want to put ourselves maybe up here. But that does take our turn, unlike in a lot of games like this. But I apologize for not knowing the deeper level mechanics, but I haven't needed to so far. I'm playing on normal difficulty mode. It's been easy so far, to say the least, and especially when you get more party members, you get more options for how to kind of deal with enemies, and it seems to make it even easier, but I have no doubts that I imagine the game gets harder once you get past the first chapter, which is kind of like, seems like a little bit of a tutorial stage, if you will. Oh, I accidentally did a melee attack there. But yeah, you know, compared to games, War of the Human Tanks had a pretty neat kind of battleship-esque strategy mechanic going on that I thought was kind of cool. The Banner Saga, fairly standard XCOM-y, grid-based, turn-based strategy, but it's beautiful. And this just kind of doesn't really strike a happy medium to me. Visually, I think it's pretty basic, just not necessarily the end of the world. I mean, the art's serviceable. And from like a gameplay standpoint, it's very much just typical kind of like, you know, turn-based RPG, old school Final Fantasy, like this person attack this person attack this person cast an AoE spell. If you're into that sort of thing, that's a positive, but it does strike me as a little bit ordinary, is maybe the polite way that I would put it right now, especially after spending time with what I'd consider to be some fairly decent turn-based strategy games this week. Mind you, this is more of the RPG side than turn-based strategy side, so I might be coming from a completely different point of calibration. Whenever you level up, you have 3 attribute points that you can put into your attributes here. Your strength, as you can see here, very good about the tooltips popping up as soon as you mouse over it, which is very interesting. Strength is the primary attribute of warriors, determining how much damage they do with their skills and attacks, both melee and ranged. Skill is for thieves, and it also increases speed and defense values, and a little bit of magic. And will is primarily your magic stat, but it also ups defense as well. But we're going to go primary. We can click auto assign, and the game will actually divvy it up as it feels fit. But these games are all about customization, right? Why don't we put 2 in that and then 1 in skill, because skill is not doing very well for us. And I think every second level, you also get the ability to level up. And you can take either, I auto-assigned skills last time, and this is what it gave me, I guess. Every other level, I believe, you get a skill point that you can put into one of these skills. It could be a passive, like increasing your maximum hit points by 15, or it could be an active, like, you know, learning a new spell, or resurrecting a knocked-out character, or increasing elemental resistances. You can see that. And there's what we looted as well. We could go to the party setup screen and maybe put some of that equipment on our character. So after the first wave finished, Draco and Dora bust into the room. Draco is like our mage-type character, and Dora is a dwarf who is specialized in ranged attacks, which is, I guess, a little unusual, but I don't know the mythology of dwarves, so I'll read some of this dialogue out. "You're a bit late, actually," says Loren. There wasn't enough time for the conversation to continue, though. Well, after I said I'm going to read new dialogue, there's not enough time for the conversation. I see how it is, game. A new group of enemies started to materialize before them. Their forms seemed to solidify before their very eyes. Sauron tensed instinctively, knowing that there was sorcery at play. All right, so we have some goblins that have appeared in front of us. Kind of looks like a pot-bellied Steve-O. The adversaries that had materialized were none other than a few goblins and a giant hulking overlord. Draco says, "It's Grob!" We rescued Draco from the forest earlier. He said there was a hulking goblin shaman that was the size of a tree. But then Loren says, "The goblin shaman who captured you, yes, be careful! His magic is very powerful. Not even 1 tree tall." There's an element of humor that goes through it. The joke's kind of wasted from just by kind of being shown in media res here. Magic schmagic, we can handle a few greenies by ourselves. Dora pulled out a short bow and an arrow. Indeed. Alright, so we're going to get started here with our boss fight, and we can review our party setup. Because our mage obviously is a little bit less hardy than our other characters, we're going to put him in the back. And because our dwarf specializes in ranged attacks with a bow and arrow, we're going to put her in the back as well, because there's no need to keep her out in the front. We'll probably have to heal Loren, the Amazon princess, over the course of this, because she lost a lot of HP in the earlier fight. Oftentimes, you do have a chance to actually rest before a fight, though. Did we get paralyzed or something? No, they just used Blizzard on us. Okay, so now we have 4 attacks in a row. So we're going to start, and what I'm going to do is focus on taking out the boss first, because as with a lot of boss fights, 13 to 14, 28 to 30. Okay, so this is still better. As with a lot of boss fights, he can actually like heal and resurrect his minions, as he is a mage. But this is kind of cool. As our magic user, we actually have some spells here. This is a really good spell. Fireball 1 is an AoE attack. Oh, I actually thought it did more damage to the unit in the center and then less to the ones on the flanks, but it actually does less to the one in the center and more to the one on the flanks. More to the ones on the flanks, I guess I should say, but that's okay. This will cost us 20 SP, which is, you know, a little bit more than a third of our total, so we can only really cast this twice. But then when you run out of SP, we do have a 0 SP magic bolt that does very little damage, but this spell obviously does a ton of damage, so I like casting this right off the bat. And then we can just do, we're gonna have to attack the units in the front lines, unfortunately, with our actual melee characters here. But that's alright. With this guy, I suppose I could attack the unit in the back, but it doesn't do very much damage. The magic is way better, so we'll just focus on taking out one of these units in the front line first. So now we're going to have them go through, and as you can see, they're not really doing a lot of damage. A lot of the enemies so far deal like 1 to 2 damage, which is really where I've, you know, kind of found myself being like, I'm not really that scared. I am going to use a potion on Amazon Princess here, and we'll just use a minor healing potion. And we'll keep kind of hacking away at this guy, and one more hit will be enough to kill him. But I think our mage or our archer will go next. Oh, no, it's our Amazon Princess, actually, because the melee attacks have so little delay associated with them that you can go multiple times pretty quickly. So we're going to cast another fireball here. This should destroy one, and it almost destroyed the other one as well. So we'll just use like a really bad melee, or sorry, ranged attack and take him out of the equation as soon as possible. So there's only 3 goblins left. And lots of those attacks actually missed us, which is very nice. We'll focus our ranged attacks as much as possible. Oh, why can't I? Oh, she's paralyzed for a turn. You can see the status effects really clearly. Target is unable to perform any action except defending or using items from the inventory. So as much as I'm not necessarily a fan of the presentation of the game, from a functional standpoint, I think it works really well. Like, status effects are very clearly seen. Portraits go monochrome when you take someone out, and you can easily see enemy HP and SP as well. Although I don't really manage their HP or SP in my head, so that's maybe not as important, but being able to see the status effects is very important. So both of my melee units are paralyzed right now, so I'm just going to have them defend, which gives them greater resistance to attacks. We will not be able to do another fireball unless I actually use a potion. So why don't we use a... Is that going to be enough? Yeah, that'll be enough to do 2 more attacks. So now he has 46 SP and he can do 2 more fireballs. We are no longer frozen, so I think we should go to town a little bit on this enemy in the middle, and now we can cast a fireball, and I think we should still cast the fireball like right in the middle. Maybe we should cast the fireball right here. No, the magic resistance on that enemy. That's the reason the magic resistance, or that's the reason it does so little damage to the enemy that's getting directly hit with the fireball, is because the magic resistance is so high on the shaman. That makes a lot more sense, actually. But we'll be able to kill the boss here. That means we'll just take out the rest of the minions, as the boss will no longer be able to resurrect anybody. At this point, you probably kind of understand what you're getting from a gameplay standpoint here. We can't attack him. Again, it's fairly by the numbers kind of RPG style. I almost compare it, or, you know, would like to compare it a little bit more to something like the, I didn't mean to attack who I attacked there, I think. I almost compare it a little bit more to like the, penny arcade games, like from Zeboid games. It's kind of like that, but I still think the presentation is a little bit less ambitious than those games. I'm going to stop attacking this guy who has buff. He has protection from a warrior in the front line. That seems really stupid of me to constantly waste my time attacking him. Instead, we'll just murder his teammate, and that's fine for me. So yeah, I would have liked a little bit more of an ambitious presentation here. It doesn't necessarily take away from the gameplay, but I'm pretty sure you understand what I'm getting at when I say that, you know, it's a little bit uninspired for me. And as someone who's not necessarily super interested in turn-based RPGs or strategy games, that is a little bit of a nasty takeaway, because, you know, something like the Banner Saga has really drawn me in. I wasn't necessarily super into the grid-based combat at first, but then the art style kind of pulled me in, and then I got invested into the game. Whereas here, the investment, or the incentive to invest in the game, comes from the story. If you're into visual novel stuff, that might be more up your alley, but it's not necessarily my cup of tea. So I'm going to auto-assign some stats here. So he's going to get extra will, which makes his magic do more damage. And why don't we get Fireball level 2, which will improve that a little bit. By the way, apologies for the Steam overlay. I will never stop being frustrated with that. We can also level up our dwarf here. That'll probably level up her skill. Skill and strength. Okay, and what about skill? Let's see what skill she's got. We can do a pinning shot, which will trap them. Causes paralysis for 2 turns. And it does 125% normal damage. It's pretty good. Increases character's defense value by 15% for 3 turns. We already have that. We can get the second level, I think. Is that what we... No. Oh, yes, it is. We could also increase our defense by 30% for 4 turns. Sneak attack. Target needs to be... I don't know if that's, like, scared. Hit single staggered target. It must be staggered, then. For 110% base damage and 110% accuracy, with 30% chances of causing scared for 3 more turns. That's pretty useful. Or we could use these extra skills here from the Thief class. So the one is Hunter. That's, like, our... We have 2 classes. I was going to say race and class, but that, you know, you can't be a thief race, I guess. But we have thief things as well, so critically hits a single weakened, scared, slowed, or confused target with 130% damage and burning condition. That seems pretty good. Anyway, you get the general idea here. I generally prefer passives, but that's because I am a little baby. But we'll take Camouflage too, which increases our defense, just in case they end up in the front lines at any point. All right, so having finished this, a lot of the story stuff is going to take place now, and I'm going to be doing a lot of reading. What I do want to say just before we get started, visual novel stuff, very much not my style, and I think we've covered that recently, even with the Banner Saga, and these are okay games to compare. They're fairly similar, especially in the way that they kind of partition their gameplay, or partition their game, I should say, partition the experience between gameplay and story. They're both about, 50-50, or even like maybe 1/3 gameplay, 2/3 story. Now I totally forgot what I was going to say. Even with respect to something like the Banner Saga, the story is secondary to my actual enjoyment from the gameplay of the game. So I'm not the kind of person who necessarily gets super invested into story-driven games. But what I will say, in the interest of being fair to the game, I've read the Steam reviews on this game. I've talked to people on Twitter. People who are into visual novel-style storytelling really seem to resonate with this game. And they like the fact that there's that kind of romantic subplot. I'm not sure if it's a subplot. There's romantic overtones, but it's not necessarily the point of the story, at least from what I've seen so far. People really seem to resonate with that. So if you're the kind of person who does like visual novel stuff, I'm not judging you at all. I'm just saying it's not necessarily my cup of tea. In the Steam reviews for this game, people put 7, 10, 12 hours into this game, and they say this was really fun. It was really addictive, and I really got invested in the story. So before we get started here, my impressions are visual novel style stuff, not necessarily my cup of tea, didn't really draw me in, but your mileage may vary. After a series of attacks from the party, Grob finally gave up. The creature collapsed, struggling to breathe. Loren says, "You've lost. Do you have anything to say before I kill you?" "Just one thing." Grob lifted his staff and growled an incantation that cast a spell over the entire group. Draco had no time to protect them with an anti-curse, and the group was instantly paralyzed. Loren struggled against the spell, but Grob's sorcery was too much even for her. Grob says, "You may have managed to defeat me this time, but this is far from over. I have another surprise for you." The dead goblins and thugs whom the group had killed were changing form, turning into what looked like city guards. Though they were in a pool of blood, the guards' uniforms were unmistakable. Sauron says, "We're in serious trouble now. If you're not familiar with, or you can't divine what's happening, we're staying in this city. Probably shouldn't be killing city guards in our room." So he's transformed the corpses into things that maybe look like they're incriminating from our perspective. "I do hope you like humans, Amazon Queen. You're all going to rot in the Empire's prison now." It's more of a Grand Moff Tarkin style, but that's okay. And this is the city guard has shown up. There's just something, and I don't mean this offensively, about like the anime style, like super kawaii eyes with the like thick gray beard and like Spanish conquistador outfit that unnerves me a little bit. Like, conquistadores, rip off your fake beard and let's ravage each other, please. There's something feminine about the nose and the eyes combination. Grob disappeared, fading into thin air just as he had appeared. The screams were enough to alert local guards to come running to see what had happened. And this is us again. This is bad. "Blast that Grob, he's foiled me again. You'd think I'd know better by now." Sauron says, "We have more important things to worry about. Lower your weapons." Despite the demands of the guard, Loren had no intention of surrendering. She tried to resist as the soldiers swarmed around them, shouting obscenities. She was the one shouting obscenities. Otherwise, it just kind of seems like police brutality, I hope. But it was futile. There were too many of them, and soon everyone's hands were shackled behind them, and they were pushed through the streets to their fate. "On hand me at once! Cease your struggling, wench! Wench, you will die this day!" The writing is sometimes a little bit stunted, but I think you can chalk it up to the character of Loren, the Amazon princess, being like sheltered and always kind of waited on hand and foot her whole life. "Your Majesty, no! Fighting will only make us look guilty. Just let them take us in. I promise I can get us out." "You promise? Dwarves' honor!" "That's nonsense. You can't promise to get us free from a jail cell." "Yes, I can. I bet you 10 gold I can." A guard pushed Sauron forward harshly, and he stumbled forward with a groan. "Listen, I can cast a flash spell to blind them all right now. It'll give us more than enough time to escape. We can take horses and seek refuge with the elves and druids. They're friendlier than these guys by far." This is another thing I wanted to point out. It's kind of a cool aspect of Loren, the Amazon princess, and that is that there's a good degree of choice and a good degree of customization, and these kind of affect how you go through the game. I mean, the way that you create your character and get your base attributes is basically by taking a personality test. They'll be like, oh, so you were at a tavern with your mistress, and then people started hassling her. What did you do? And then you could say, like, oh, I fought them off, or, oh, I snuck her out of the building, or, oh, I just let her take it, basically. And that'll give you strength or will or skill based on your answers, and you can kind of tailor your character like that. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I had this game on PS1 called Pocket Fighter, and it had like a little bit of a custom fighter creator engine, and the way that it worked is basically like it gave you a fighter based on the personality test that it gave you. I always thought that stuff was super interesting, and the same with Doki Doki Universe, which just came out on PS4 and PS Vita. The personality test stuff in that is kind of neat. I think it's neat here too, and even throughout the story, there are choices that you can make that have an appreciable impact on how things go, beyond a superficial impact anyway. So I'm clicking through a little bit of the dialogue to get to a choice right now, but see, we can either take Dora's plan to escape from the jail cell or follow Draco's plan to run to the elves. Now, this is not like a Long Live the Queen style, you know, we have to pass like a test, like if your skill is above 11, then you'll pass this test, and if it's below 11, then you won't. I'm pretty sure these are just like, whatever plan you pick is going to succeed in its own way, but you can choose which kind of track you want to go on. We're going to follow Draco's plan to run to the elves. Throwing caution to the wind, Loren hurriedly accepted Draco's plan. Draco, I don't know, is it Yvonne Draco or Draco Malfoy? Through the fiery chaos that ensued, the group was able to escape the guards and get out of the city just as they had hoped. The group was silent and very somber after they made their escape. They knew very well that the gravity of the decision that they had made that night could very well come back to haunt them. Does it? I don't know, I haven't gotten that far. The Empire was a dangerous enemy, but it was impossible to guess how greatly their mission would have been delayed if they'd been arrested. Our mission to find Queen Karen, the mother of Loren. Be ready for anything, we're approaching the outskirts of the forest, as she says. Why did you look at me when you said that? There's some character dynamics. You know, Draco, he's trying to kind of weasel his way in, maybe get a little piece of Loren, but Saren is like, I'm the honorable guy, but really I want to probably get on top of that a little bit later, and I think she wants it too. They didn't slow their pace until they entered the forest. The trees seemed to grow larger the deeper they traveled inside, and soon signs of an exotic culture began to spring up. Carved bark, marked paths, old campfires, and abandoned tree houses. And now we have encountered an elf. It's very much like a high fantasy universe, if that makes sense. Though they had only begun to breach the forest, they were almost instantly surrounded by elven guards. Dozens of long-eared scouts sprang from the bushes and trees with bows and swords alike aimed at the party. Anyway, the story continues. You get 1/3 gameplay, 2/3 story. 1/3 gameplay, 2/3 story. That's my rough approximation of how it's been so far. And for me, it's a little bit frustrating because it kind of kills the momentum of the gameplay. This sounds like really offensive. I don't mean it. It's a little bit more frustrating when the gameplay is something that I find myself really enthralled by, which I'm not necessarily with Loren the Amazon Princess. But I think I've said my piece on the game, but I'll sum it up. It's not the best RPG or turn-based strategy game from a gameplay standpoint I've played, and the story didn't really draw me in. So for me, that makes a pretty, mixed experience, or an experience that is definitely not something that's up my alley. I'm not going to finish Loren the Amazon Princess in my off time. It's just not the kind of game and storytelling style that I typically enjoy, and that's fine. That being said, I would encourage you after you watch this video, if you're like, well, Northern Lion said he didn't really like it that much, but this looks like it's kind of up my alley, read reviews from people who are into the kind of stuff that you're into, or watch videos from the kind of people that are into the stuff that you're into, because there does seem to be a community for this game that really enjoys it. And it would be really shitty of me to say like, oh, the story's like blah blah, and the gameplay is like really derivative, or something like that. Those are just hypothetical complaints. When actually, what I want to do is present games like this objectively. If it's a game in a genre that I know, and then I feel that something's really bad, then I don't feel as uncomfortable coming over the top and saying like, well, it does this, and this wrong, and this is why it's not very good, blah, blah, blah. But for something like this is just kind of an exhibition. Take this as like a Rock Lee Smile style indie impressions. I'm exhibiting the game, I'm curating it a little bit, I'm saying, not necessarily my style. Go do your own research, though, if it looks like the kind of thing that you would be into. If it's not the kind of thing that you're going to be into, this is not going to change your mind. This is not a gateway into this genre, I think. That being said, pretty robust options menu, as you can see here for yourself. This will make Total Biscuit happy. But in any case, that's going to do it for Loren the Amazon Princess. If you want to pick it up for yourself or read the Steam reviews, there will be a link to the store page in the video description below. It's $20. That's another thing I would bring up. It's a little bit pricey for games like this. The Banner Saga was $25, but it also had, full orchestrated soundtrack, very, very beautiful artwork. Not to say that the artwork here isn't serviceable, but, there is a marked difference, I think. I don't know how the lengths of the games compare, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, this game is this game is this, and they cost similar amounts. $20 is fairly expensive for an indie game on Steam, so you have to weigh that for yourself as well. Also, if you enjoyed the episode, in spite of my rambling, make sure to click a like on the video. It does help out a great deal. And subscribe if you want to see more first impressions. Again, link to the store page will be in the video description. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.